Have you seen this man? Have you seen that chin? This man is dangerous. This man is powerful. This man is 1-0 in MMA. Last we saw of Chadwick Vincent Parker, he was on the Dana White Contender Series, won his fight by knockout and qualified to fight for the WFA, and now he's receiving a fight offer from Cody Soto. He's got 5 weeks to train, and Cody is a boxer, so we better start things off with some solid boxing training. We start off the boxing training and the first thing our opponent does is kick us in the head. Now this throws Chad off a little bit, and then following another kick, he feels like he's been led into the wrong thing, and he starts getting bopped and kicked in the head, and he's down. After getting up, Chad's angry and decides to start throwing some combinations that Marshall just simply can't take, and his chin starts to crumble. And after landing a sweet uppercut, he knows he's got Marshall on the ropes and decides to come in and start throwing some crazy hooks. And crazy hooks he throws. Marshall is then wobbled, but Chad decides to be the better man and not knee him in square in the face and let him get back up. After landing another sweet uppercut, Marshall is down once again, but Chad, being the better man, decides to let him get back to his feet. But he can tell he's wounded, so Chad decides it's time to land the grand final punch. And one swift uppercut later, Marshall is down for the count. Now that sparring session didn't go exactly to plan, and Chad has been injured, so what we're going to have to do is apply an ice pack to his head and spend $25,000 for medical grade glue for the cut that's very minor on that massive chin. And after blowing all of our life savings on some adhesive, it's time for some wrestling training. Starting things off nicely, Chad used one of his greatest and most famous moves. He threw Dominique to the ground. And upon that he realised he was vastly superior, so, wasting little to no time, he choked Dominique out, and that was the end of the wrestling training. And after feeling like he'd really proven his point as a wrestler, Chad decided to invite Misha Kirkinov to show the rest of the heavyweight division truly who they were about to be messing with. Chad started things off strong by slamming Kirkinov to the ground. And once at full mount, he decided immediately to start choking out Kirkinov, but he managed to survive. And Parker, not being one to waste any time, quickly flattened out Kirkinov on his back and rear naked choked him, but once again, he survived. Getting back to the feet, Chad wasted no time in once again showing Kirkinov his takedown prowess, before once again applying yet another arm triangle, and finally, Kirkinov gave up. Now, what actually happened there was I was supposed to do a triangle from guard rather than being in the dominant position, but my inability to read and understand that made it incredibly difficult at the time, so that's why that didn't happen. But we'll just gloss over that and carry on like I was meant to just demolish Kirkinov, and it was supposed to happen like that. The day of the fight was quickly approaching, so Chad really had to knuckle down on his training and prepare for one of the biggest fights of his life. This wasn't good. Chad had been concussed, so close to the fight, and he didn't have enough money to pay for the treatment, so he just had to rest it off. Hopefully, when it came to the fight, he'd be able to recover. And speaking of fight week, here we were. His first fight in the WFA, Chad Parker, Cody Soto. It was time, about time, that this all went down. Starting off strong, Chad knew that Cody was a boxer, so he kept his distance, tried to find his range, and started landing some clean shots on Cody's head. And then suddenly, one good shot, and Soto was down. Chad immediately jumped in and started pounding, and that was it. 5 weeks of training and a concussion, and 30 seconds was all it took for our big-chinned beast to take down Cody Soto in his debut fight for the World Fighting Alliance. Having his hand raised again filled Chad with joy, a joy that only fighting brings him. And when he was offered his next fight, he immediately took it. Barbosa, the Brazilian beast, known in the WFA to be a monster when tussling with him on the ground. But Chad wasn't afraid. He was given only 3 weeks to prepare, and in that 3 weeks he did some intense jiu-jitsu training, and just 3 weeks later he was ready for the big fight. Starting things off, the boys showed each other a good sign of respect, and Barbosa decided to keep things on the feet. He obviously hadn't done his research, so Chad retaliated and started throwing hands himself. And then in no time at all, Chad dropped Barbosa on his ass and started kneeing him in the face, dropped him to the ground, started punching him some more, and then realised he had the boy wobbled. And then, as we all know, he did his favourite move and threw him to the ground. This is what Chad had trained for, Barbosa's ruthless jiu-jitsu. But it seemed like no matter what Barbosa did, Chad stopped everything and just held him to the ground, like he couldn't even stop anything he did. And then, after wrenching on Barbosa's arm for only seconds, he immediately tapped. He'd won again, of 3 weeks' notice, and he was, once again, the winner. The after party was rough, but Chad immediately got back in the gym, checked his fight offer, and was stunned. That tattooed arm meant only one thing: power. Would Chad be able to face that power? You'll have to find out next time.